sometimes the act of pushing other distractions away can help us to focus. Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Today I want to talk about focus. How do we stay focused in language learning? Remember, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, click on the bell for notifications. If you follow me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or elsewhere, please leave a review. Focus. I get this question all the time. People say they lose focus. So how do we get focused? How do we stay focused? It just turns out that in my Persian learning, we were able to get permission to use some podcasts by a fellow called B+, who does sort of Farsi, Persian language summaries of very popular self-help books. So he did one on deep learning, or deep work, Kor Amig, deep work, and one on focus, Tamarkoz. And so I went back to have a look at those. Wanted to see if there was something there, and I'd gone through them in Persian and didn't find them that interesting actually. And so, but then I went back and looked at them again to see if I could learn anything relevant. Right away I was more focused because I was interested in the subject to see if there was anything there that would be helpful in addressing this whole issue of focus. There wasn't, because like so many of these self-help books, it's just a lot of common sense stuff packaged together in a new format. We need to concentrate, we need to focus, and taking some examples of people in history who would isolate themselves for 2 weeks at a time. Bill Gates would go off to his cottage, or Jung, the famous psychologist or psychiatrist, had a chalet in Switzerland or something. And certainly I remember, there are people in history, who was it who had his tower Montaigne, who wrote essays in French. He had his tower there somewhere down in the southwest of France, where he would go and he would be isolated. And obviously, if we can isolate ourselves, that helps us concentrate. But most people who are learning languages, they can't take 2 weeks off to go off somewhere. If they have 2 weeks, they're probably better off to go to the country where the language is spoken. So how do we focus in our language learning? And also, and this comes up in both these books, and it's something we're well aware of, the modern sort of internet information age, where we have access to information, we have access to so much language content. For example, we have access to grammatical explanations at the click of a Google keystroke, and we have also access to an audience for anything we want to do. Like right now I'm talking to people I don't know, and so this is a new world, and there's good and there's bad. And the good is that we can access so many things, and we can get our message to so many people, and we can learn so many things quickly. If I'm doing something in Persian and they refer to a certain dynasty in the history of Persia, then I can go and click Wikipedia and read it in English, which is easier for me to understand. Then I go back. And so there are all these distractions. So what do we do? First of all, one very surprising thing is I find that one of the best places for me to focus is in an airplane, where there's noise, there's people, but I'm stuck there. So in a way, all of the noise and the possible distractions are not distractions. I find that I'm able to do a lot of reading and a lot of studying on an airplane. We had a programmer at Link who did his best work. We have a sort of what we call a sky train, which is our public transit system, which travels around above ground. It's not underground. And he would go on the sky train with all of the distractions that were there, and he found himself better able to concentrate and come up with solutions in terms of his programming. So it's not obvious. And I have said before that if I sit down to listen to something, just to listen to something, I easily lose my focus. Whereas if I'm doing the dishes or in the car, I have some other activity, I'm better able to focus. I know there are people who can focus better in a cafe with all the distractions and the other people than they can at home where they're on their own. So sometimes the act of pushing other distractions away can help us to focus. I think everyone has to find their own, which environment is most conducive to focus. I think having a time of the day is good. So my listening is not so much a focus activity. I listen, I sometimes focus, sometimes don't focus. I don't think it's a problem. It's free learning, because it's learning that happens while I'm doing something else. So I'm not attempting to learn anything during that period. I just know that it's beneficial to be listening to whatever it is I'm listening to. But I try to have a certain period of time, and because I'm retired, it can be in the afternoon. I used to do it before going to sleep, but that's a bit distracting, and I don't think it's good for the brain to be trying very hard to learn things just before going to bed. And I think there is perhaps some truth in the fact that, because I do a lot of my learning on the iPad, that having that electronic, those signals coming at you is probably not good for your sleep. So if I am going to study, say, Egyptian Arabic or something, I have a textbook, or a book, a textbook, and so I will look at the book before going to sleep. But I don't want to use my iPad before going to sleep. But for some people, that could be a period of time where they are able to focus and concentrate. I have said that with my listening, which I do first thing in the morning, that's another part of my routine. I don't worry about my focus. Whatever I'm able to pick up from my listening is good. And I'll either be listening to my mini story for the 35th time, or I'll be listening to a news podcast and getting something from that. I don't worry about my focus there. This idea of distractions, obviously, if we are still working and we're interrupted and we're checking our email or checking our messages, obviously it's better to do that, save it until the end of the hour, or save it. But these are things that so many people have written about, that you can't be constantly checking your Twitter feed, constantly checking your emails or your messages. You're better off to save that for a period of time, do it in a sort of a batch, and then get back, so that your language learning is, a batch process. You're spending time with your language, and then the other duties that you have, then they occur at a certain time. Now, I'm not saying anything there that hundreds of other people haven't said. Not everyone can do that, and obviously it's very tempting to, especially, the Olympic Games, whatever your country is, how did we do in the middle of your studying? Because you can access it, you go and do it. So, we can say don't do that, and some people are going to do it nevertheless. Part of it is how genuinely motivating is whatever you're reading or listening to. How committed are you to the task at hand? If you're only casually committed to the task, you'll be more easily, distracted. If say you were, your life depended upon learning something, you would be totally motivated to learn that. You would stay on the task. If you're very interested in some aspect of Japanese anime or whatever it might be, or Persian history, then I'm going to stay on task. If it's not interesting, then I won't stay on task. So focus is also a function of how relevant, how interesting, how compelling whatever content you have is. Now, when you're speaking, of course, I don't think focus is so much of an issue, because you're involved in a conversation, say with your tutor. Your tutor is going to ask you questions. You're going to have to respond to the questions. So focus there is not so much of an issue. Focus becomes a bigger issue when you're involved in what could be considered passive activities like listening and reading, and your mind wanders. And in today's day and age, in the internet age, it's easy to be distracted and allow your mind to wander. So, all I can say really is, in my own case, I am distracted. I think to some extent it's a negative that goes with all of the other advantages that the internet age provides us. So I accept that. And I think I beat off the impulse to go and check up on my email or my Twitter feed as best I can, and sometimes I succumb. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of focused learning that takes place. And I think we don't need to be perfectionists when it comes to focus, and just try our best to focus as best we can using whatever methods work best with our lifestyle. So that's really all I have to say on the subject of focus. So I hope that was useful. Bye for now.